In a sec. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Now heads up.
All right. Hey, don't get up, everybody. Don't really. Just stay seated, please.
If you tuned in, you can see Darren. You want to see me sitting there right behind him.
Come on up. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Are we ready to roll? Who's telling me it's time to start?
Action.
Action. Take one. Take one. Folks, good afternoon. We're here because we want to be clear about what is happening with this big billionaire boondoggle bill. Is also the single most extreme anti-environment piece of legislation that Congress has ever seen. It is reckless. It is corrupt. We call the Natural Resources title the Environmental Liquidation for Billionaires Act. It guts bedrock protections for clean air, clean water, public lands, gives big oil a virtual blank check to drill and frack and pollute anywhere they want, including some of the most treasured and ecologically sensitive places in the country. So as Interior Secretary Burgum is perhaps enjoying some of his famous fresh-baked cookies down the street, we know that our public lands are being liquidated by this Republican majority. They're ramming through mandatory drilling in the Arctic Refuge, toxic mining in the Boundary Waters watershed, auctioning off of more than 4 million acres of public lands, more land area than the state of Connecticut, to mine coal that nobody wants or needs. Instead of winning the clean energy future, they are trying to make black lung and acid rain great again. The provisions in this bill read like a big oil wish list, sweetheart lease deals in the Gulf of Trump or whatever they're calling it these days, in Alaska, slashed royalty rates, immunity from judicial review, sky-high protest fees designed to silence impacted communities. Their new golden grift, pay-to-play permitting plan actually lets the richest polluters buy their way out of any legal challenges. Meanwhile, clean energy investments get crushed. That's not just backward, it's anti-competitive. It will show up in Americans' monthly electricity bills. And here's the kicker. The same Republicans who claim to be fiscally responsible, same ones who wring their hands about deficits when it's time to take away food assistance or undermine climate resilience, they're about to add $3.8 trillion to the national debt, according to the CBO, so they can bankroll their billionaire tax cuts and their fossil fuel industry handouts. The same folks who say they want to put conservative back in conservation are destroying national parks, public lands, sacred tribal sites, all just to please the oil lobby. Their hypocrisy is staggering, and the American people see right through it, and they feel betrayed. Remember those promises about lower costs? Remember Donald Trump saying he would provide the cleanest air, the cleanest water? Well, they're using reconciliation to jam all of this stuff through for a reason. They know the American people hate it and would never support any of it. They're sneaking this through in the dark of night because it's the only chance they have of passing some of this stuff. But the American people are going to see. And they're going to notice when their energy bills start to go up. They're going to notice when their towns flood or burn, when their kids get sick more often because their community was sold out to polluting industries. They're going to notice when public health protections vanish, when Medicaid and food assistance go away. The House still has a chance to stop this monstrosity. And if Republicans insist on jamming it through, the Senate has to step up and stop it, because this is not just bad politics. It's about whether government works for the people or just for polluters, profiteers, and Trump's billionaire oligarch pals. With that, I am so pleased to stand with these colleagues behind me who are champions in their own right for clean energy, for our environment, for our public lands, for winning the future. And I'm going to hand off at this point to Representative Don Beyer of Virginia.
Thank you, Jerry, very much, and thank you for your long-term environmental leadership as the ranking Democrat on Natural Resources. Soon, I hope to be the chair of the Committee on Natural Resources.
Inshallah.
And I want to just take a minute to recognize the environmental legacy of my colleague, Jerry Connolly, who, to my knowledge, was the very first Virginian in Congress to push for banning offshore oil and gas drilling off the coast of Virginia. I know also the longest, most beautiful trail in Northern Virginia, 40 miles, is named after Jerry. Because as chairman of the county board, he created dozens of new parks. And I know he would have been with us today to talk about how disastrous this bill is, both for energy and for economic future. If you care about climate change, this bill threatens the very progress the U.S. has made to bring down emissions. It can increase emissions by up to 730 million metric tons by 2035, and basically put us out of reach with any chance of complying with our environmental agenda or climate change agenda. If you care about energy dominance too, which is what Trump says he wants, this bill is totally unserious. Thanks to the IRA, since 2022, we've seen energy projects created that have created 400,000 new jobs and more than $400 billion of announced new investments. And by the end of 2024, the annual investments in American factories hit $150 billion. And nearly 3/4 of this energy investment went to states that Donald Trump won in 2024. They were often located in rural areas hit hard by globalization and technology that needed the skilled workforces for this. So harming energy credits in this reconciliation bill hurts most the very voters that put Donald Trump in office. And Republicans are putting all of this at risk. This bill would reduce the amount of new capacity, energy dominance, right, by almost 72% by 2035. Further, cutting the credits while the manufacturing sector is already at risk from Trump's tariffs. That's meant a lot of these companies right now are letting people go. Between tariffs and this reconciliation bill, more than 50,000 energy jobs have been lost, delayed, or threatened, and $56 billion of energy investments stalled or canceled. So if you care about energy dominance, this is the wrong bill, completely unserious. And if you care about economic growth, thousands of good-paying energy jobs, sending U.S. manufacturing overseas, eliminating the landscape that made domestic investment attractive. And it hurts manufacturing and mining also. And if you care about affordability, Americans are going to pay the price while billionaires reap the profits. This is tax cuts for billionaires paid for by our retreat from serious climate addressing. Average American residential consumer will see their electricity bill rise by $110 in 2026, which is way more than the bottom 20% are going to save in taxes because of this bill. Gasoline is going to rise by 37%. The cost of households, $400 billion on energy over the next year. Further, this bill eliminates all those credits for home energy efficiency and generation, the new solar panels, the new heat pump. And if you wanted to buy an electric vehicle, which 10% of Americans did last year, it gets rid of all the tax credits for buying an EV or a commercial electric vehicle. And 3 million Americans use those tax credits in 2023. Overall, this bill is going to raise energy costs for every American household. It's a bad deal for America. It's a bad deal for our climate. It's a bad deal for economic growth. It's a bad deal for a future government. And it's a bad deal for all those people that voted for Donald Trump. Let me now turn this over to my good friend from Upper New York State, Paul Tonka.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Don. Let me lend my voice also to condolences on the passing of Jerry Connolly. Congresswoman Doris Matsui and I had the honor of serving as co-chairs with Jerry, and it's a heavy moment for SEEC too, for the House, for the caucus, but for SEEC too. He was a great leader. So we know this bill is full of giveaways to the fossil fuel industry, selling off of our public land at cut-rate prices and creating pay-to-pollute permitting schemes, But what does it actually mean for average hardworking Americans? First, their electricity bills are going to rise because this bill functionally ends tax incentives to support the build-out of new affordable energy resources. More than half a dozen studies have been produced, and they all agree consumers will see significant increases in energy prices due to these policies. People will also lose incentives to reduce the upfront costs to retrofit their homes or buy an electric vehicle. In 2023, more than 3.4 million families saved some $8.4 billion on home improvements to make their homes more efficient or to be powered by clean energy, lowering their utility bills for years to come. Second, jobs will be lost and investments will stop. Since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, the U.S. has created more than 400,000 new clean energy jobs from over $422 billion worth of private sector investments. This includes hundreds of facilities to manufacture batteries, electric vehicles, and other clean energy technologies and process critical minerals. 75% of private sector clean energy investments are located in counties with household incomes lower than the national median. These investments are uplifting communities. Since Republicans launched their crusade to repeal these credits, grants, and loans, there have been billions of dollars and more than 50,000 jobs canceled or put on pause. Republicans have said they support domestic manufacturing, especially to compete with China on critical minerals. The credits and programs they are targeting were doing just that. As an example, consider solar energy. In the past 2 years, solar manufacturers have announced $36 billion of investments, which will create over 44,000 manufacturing jobs. In 2017, the U.S. ranked 14th in the world for solar panel manufacturing capacity. Today, the U.S. has surpassed many competitors and now ranks third in manufacture of solar panels, passing low-wage countries like Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. More and more pieces of the supply chain were in process of being reshored. Many of these new domestic manufacturers will likely fail without incentives to actually deploy the technologies being produced. Even technologies that Republicans claim to support, geothermal and advanced nuclear, aren't spared. Tax credit for these technologies will be long expired before any projects are completed. The DOE loan program is critical to getting risky, first-of-a-kind projects built, and it will be largely defunded by this bill. So this bill is a lose-lose. It's bad for people's wallets, and it's bad for building a strong, competitive economy. It sells out current and future generations of Americans to fund tax cuts for billionaires and undermine fossil fuels' biggest competition, clean energy. Americans will pay more down the road through higher energy bills, dirtier air, worsening climate disasters, and rising healthcare costs. So, important information that we share with the public, and also putting that statement forward to the attention of our U.S. senators, who now will be dealing with this terrible bill if it should pass. So I now hand over this. Oh, you switched the order.
We're going to switch up the order.
Mr. MC, it's yours.
Just a slight programming change. We're now going to go to not only a leader on the Natural Resources Committee, but a member of the Rules Committee, who has been up all night and who needs to get back there because the grand unveiling of the manager's amendment, I understand, is coming soon. So let me introduce our great colleague from New Mexico, Teresa Ledger-Fernandez.
If you need us to prompt.
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much to my colleagues for allowing me to go a little out of order. Yes, I've been here since 1 o'clock because they wanted to make sure that in the dark of night, they would push through the rules. But Democrats have shown up and have made sure that this bill sees the light of day so that we can shine the light on what they are actually doing. And the reality is that it's like what they're focusing on is as dark as their plan to have this done at night, right? They are focusing on making sure they keep the dirtiest energy dominant. When they say energy dominance, it's not about energy, which includes the sun and geothermal and the wind and those things that we know can power our homes cheaper, more affordable, while also creating the kinds of jobs communities like mine need and want, and helping to stop this global heat problem that we have. Let's call it, whatever my people in my district, I'm really exhausted. So it's like, really saying, it's like, is it gonna keep getting hot? They ask me these kinds of questions. They don't talk about, how much Celsius or is it gonna keep getting hot? Teresa, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna keep going through droughts? How come we're not protecting La Madre Tierra? How come we're not protecting this beautiful planet that we call home? And I come from a place that honors land and air and water, agua es vida. And I come from a place that not only has the second largest oil development in the country, I represent that kind of district. New Mexico has the second largest oil production after Texas. But we also have amazing wind powers. We have, one first or second in terms of solar power, depending on who we're competing with. We have geothermal, and we want to develop all of those resources. And what they are doing in that bill of theirs is cutting us off from those possibilities. And I think that's what we come back to, is they are cutting us off from the possibilities that renewable energy offers for communities like mine. And over again, we see them do that. And the other thing they're doing is they are cutting our communities off from the process of participating in decisions about oil and gas leasing and mining. They don't want us, communities like mine, that are Native American, that are poor, that are Latino, that are rural, to be able to have the ability to participate in that process. They will give a free pass, get out of environmental review fast to those who will pay more. But what will they do to the community members who want to participate? They're going to charge you to just participate in the process. The other thing they're going to do is eliminate the ability of tribes to have judicial review on tribal lands and those ancestral lands. And we've pointed out all of these problems. And I can say that I've got to get back up there because we're on our, I think, 4th panel. And I am so proud of all my Democrats because I think we got a couple of more panels. So they are not going to get that rule out tonight. And then they're going to, who knows when their amendment can be. I've got to, at some point in time, take a nap because we think they're going to be bringing us back sometime this evening to report the final rule on it, if they come up with a deal, right? So, but we have Democrats on that panel, and maybe by talking to them, they'll be able to get here. Kathy Castor and Mike Levin are talking about the issues that we're concerned about here. I will be bringing amendments when the rule is finally comes out. I'll be bringing amendments to restore the renewable tax credits, to restore the opportunity to participate, to build onto this new energy economy that we know is so important for our communities. Because not only do they want to just funnel money from the poor and the hungry and those who need health care to the wealthiest in terms of tax breaks, we also know that they want to funnel money from states like mine who do rely on oil and gas revenues, that when they cut those royalty rates, they're cutting income to my state. And we're going to need it, because when they kick those people off of Medicaid and they stop funding the education and they stop funding the nutrition programs, they're also taking away the state money that we would need to fill the gap. So every which way they look at, every which way we look at this bill, it is, as somebody said, lose, lose, lose for everybody, except the dirtiest of the manufacturers and the dirtiest of the fuel that we have in this beautiful country of ours. And we'll keep shining a light on it, and hopefully you all will keep talking about it as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back, because I
Thank you,
don't even know
Teresa.
who we're supposed to go back to.
We're going to figure it out. We're going to get back on track.
Okay, thanks, bye, everybody.
And it is now my pleasure to introduce someone who had a major hand in the clean energy incentives in the IRA that were making such an amazing difference from the Ways and Means Committee, Representative Mike Thompson. What's that? I had you on the order, and then Bruce.
Well, Jared, thank you very much for organizing this, and I want to thank all of my colleagues who were equally responsible for the great successes that we have. Jared talked about my work on Ways and Means, and as you probably know, in the Inflation Reduction Act, we put provisions in, tax provisions in, that dealt specifically with advancing renewable energy. And this is for solar, wind, geothermal, biofuels, residential and commercial energy efficiency, electric vehicles, zero-emission buses, clean energy manufacturing projects, and $1 billion a year for colleges to create or to expand environmental justice programs. 93% of the new American energy supply in the last year is from solar, wind, and batteries. And as someone has already said today, this is responsible for about 400,000 green energy jobs, new jobs, jobs that pay well, jobs that are important. And it's created about a $400 billion investment in these projects across the United States. Now, it's interesting to note that while, and I was at the Ways and Means, or at the Rules Committee just a minute ago, just came down from there, and I had an amendment to undo the terrible things that they're doing to renewable energy. And I'd be willing to bet that the outcome will be the same as last week when Ways and Means did our markup. I offered the same amendment, and I'd be willing to bet that not a single Republican on rules will vote for it. They'll follow suit of the Republicans on Ways and Means who also voted against that measure. And it's important to note, because over half of the new clean jobs created by those provisions in the IRA are in red states, in Republican districts. So the Republican bill where this one big ugly bill that we've been debating nearly around the clock cuts all the clean energy production. It'll raise electric costs by about $110 per year per household. And someone mentioned how that will be offset by the tax cuts, and I did the math quickly. And so people under $50,000 a year are going to get about $260 in tax cuts. And if you subtract the energy cost of that, that just about cuts their tax cuts in half. So talk about giveth with one hand and taketh with the other. That's exactly what's going to happen. The American consumer will see their utility costs go up by at least $110 per year. It's going to kill hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs across our country. And again, these are manufacturing jobs in the renewable energy space. And when we did this bill, when I did this bill in Ways and Means, we crafted this to be both supply side and demand side. So they could work together to have this good outcome. If you start picking it apart from one side or the other, the whole supply chain falls apart. And it's going to be apocalyptic for the renewable energy future of our country. And I think it's important to point out that in itself is a disaster, because we're competing fiercely with the Chinese for dominance in the renewable energy field. And what we're doing, what the Republicans are doing with this bill is they are acquiescing our prominence in that particular space to the Chinese. It's not good for national security. It's not good when we have one of our main competitors, someone who you're pretty hard pressed to suggest they might be an ally, working so hard against us. Bad bill. Jared, thank you for calling us together. Thank you to all of you for the good work that you've done to get us here. And I'm going to yield
To Doris.
to the gentlewoman on the Energy and Commerce Committee, someone who knows this stuff well and has done a great job on it,
right.
Congresswoman Doris Matsui.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. As co-chair of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, along with my good friend Paul Tonko, we have been engaged in these issues for quite some time, probably a decade or so. And now this is sort of the fruition that we've been hoping that we can do everything. And now here we are defending all our good work. But I would tell you this, we will still be there. I've spent years fighting for clean air, clean water, and clean energy. And my goal has always been simple: protect people's health and build a cleaner, more prosperous future. Unfortunately, my Republican colleagues are doing the opposite. Their, quote, beautiful bill will gut environmental protections, endanger public health, and wreck our economy. And let's be honest, there's nothing beautiful about it. It's dangerous, reckless, and flat out ugly. This bill attacks the basic right to clean air and clean water. By eliminating and defunding clean energy and pollution reduction programs, they're endangering everyone, including their own constituents. Americans, especially our children, are going to suffer because of these reckless, careless actions. Our friends, families, and neighbors are going to get sick more often. They're going to have more lifelong chronic conditions, and they're going to die younger. Republicans want to let oil and gas companies pay to break the rules, bypassing environmental safeguards and even dodging legal liability. That's not reform. That's legalized bribery. They're auctioning off our public health lands to the highest bidder, prioritizing profit over our environment, and sacrificing the health and future of our communities. But they couldn't stop there. Republicans' big, ugly bill will wreck our economy. It will certainly abruptly end hundreds of billions of dollars in federal investments for American manufacturing and investments. It will pull the rug out from American workers, killing jobs and shuttering businesses across our country. And families will pay the price, with electricity bills rising over $110 a year, all to hand out tax breaks to the wealthy few. To my Republican colleagues, I ask, what is the end game here? What do you hope to accomplish? To enrich a few friends, while toxic pollutants shorten our lifespans, while oil companies simply pay the government to look the other way, while American manufacturing is gutted for corporate gain. We can't let this stand. We have to look towards the future, for the future of our children and our grandchildren. We can't let them down. So we cannot allow Republicans to sell out our nation's future. Not now and not ever. And as we stand here, we're just a few of the fighters we have here. We've been fighting all through our markups. Energy and Commerce is in for 26 hours. I think Ways and Means for 17 hours. And the other committees are multiple hours. And today with rules, with all of us cycling through. And we're going to keep cycling through. I'm going to be going up there now too. And honestly, this is the moment for all of us. This is the moment we have to stand up, because we have already done so much good. Let's not lose that. Let's keep it going. Let's make sure the ground is softened so that we can, in a couple years, ensure that our nation's future will be bright and prosperous. So thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you, Representative Matsui. Now, I'm going to now hand off to someone who knows more about clean energy and climate policy than just about anyone else in the Congress, the gentleman from Illinois, Sean Cassidy.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks to everybody for being here. It's been a long day for all of us. I don't quite have Teresa's record. I've only been up since 2:30, but respect to everybody who's been around here this long. I wanted to share just a quick Jerry Connolly story. So I was 20 years in the clean energy industry. Get to Congress in 2019, and you get sort of slapped with this realization as a freshman that your prior experience doesn't matter in this line of work. It's how long you've been in this line of work that matters. And I was lamenting to Jerry how trying to figure out how I get to some point of some influence over clean energy. And Jerry came up to me a week later, and he said, I know I've been in leadership on SEEC for a long time, but we need to make room for you, and I'm going to step down next term so you can take it. And it's just, we'll miss Jerry because he's a great environmental champion. We'll miss him because he's a great legislator. We'll miss him because he was a great patriot. But he was someone who cared about this institution, and we need more of that. So celebrate, do something, thank Jerry. So I represent the south side of Chicago, southwest suburbs, which means that I represent one of our particularly pained, marginalized communities. I'm referring, of course, to White Sox fans. Set the record for losses last year. I don't know if they'll do much better this year. But if you are a White Sox fan, you kind of view the world as having two choices right now. They can either keep stinking, and the stands can keep getting emptier, and they can eventually sell the team to somebody because they'll go bankrupt, or they can find a way to start winning. There's no world where you say, you know what the White Sox should do? They should go to Congress and ask Congress to kick the Dodgers out of the league, kick the Yankees out of the league, and announce that starting next season, Major League Baseball will consist of the White Sox and a bunch of AA teams, and they can finally win. That would be what a loser does who can't play with the big boys, right? And so here we find ourselves. Let's just review some numbers. This year we're on pace that 25% of all vehicle sales are going to be EVs. By 2030, that's going to be 40%. That's surging, as I said at Rules today. That's not because people got woke. It's because you'd have to be damn near comatose to think I would rather drive a car that has high fuel costs, high maintenance costs, and crappy acceleration. They're buying it because it's a better product. The result of that transition to EVs, the result of the transition to renewables, to efficiencies, is that over the last 15 years, coal went from being 50% of energy use in the country to now 14%. Like, it just completely collapsed, lost all market share. Oil use today in the United States is about the same as it was 15 years ago. The whole oil industry is basically falling apart. They have shifted from being an oil extraction business to a cash extraction business because they can't find markets. One of the biggest demands for oil right now is plastics. That's not because plastics are growing, it's because those other markets are shrinking, especially in China, because China's electrifying faster than we are. That is awesome, right? And so the oil industry, the gas industry, which is also losing market share, the coal industry, could play like a big boy. They could do like the White Sox are doing and either say, I'm going to keep sucking until I go bankrupt because in competitive markets, that's what happens when you suck. Or I could find a way to pivot and sell people what they want because that's how competitive markets work, that's how entrepreneurs work, and God damn it, I love America. They are instead choosing to go to Congress and say, can you please kick the competitive people out of my industry because I can't compete. So they're going out there and saying, let's ban the construction of new transmission lines. Let's ban the construction of offshore wind, because every time you build one of those, it makes it harder for me to sell my product to people who don't want it. Let's ban the construction of EV charging stations. Let's ban the construction of EVs. Let's build LNG export terminals, because if we export gas overseas, it raises the price of natural gas in the United States, and I can make more money, especially if I don't have to compete with the Yankees. The trouble is that us winners work with a bunch of losers. And they love their losers, right? I mean, you look at these guys, look at the people in Trump's cabinet. This is not the A-team. These are guys who got swirlies and got shoved in locker rooms in high school and are still dealing with like the mental stress that came because nobody loves them. Their parents didn't love them. We're having to deal with all this instead of going through and like, look, we could just mock them. We should mock them. But the consequence of all this is that the temperature's going up. The consequence of this is that we're not building resources. We went from, we had the fastest growing economy in the world just a couple months ago. We had surges of manufacturing in America. We've now got people saying, if I build a factory in America, am I going to be able to plug into a grid that's going to have reliable supply? Because I don't know what you're going to build. Can I build a plant in America and know that the contract law will protect me, right? Can I build Can I build resources in America and know that the price of energy is going to come down? We don't have to have this choice, right? And the cost of that's going to be American consumers who are not only not going to have cheaper energy, are not only not going to have a reliable electric grid, are not only not going to have the industries that are providing jobs, but are sitting there with an ever-warming climate and ever-rising seas and ever-bigger hurricanes. This is a self-inflicted wound. Doesn't have to be this way. But we're going to fight with every fiber of our being to make sure that we do the policy right, that we look out for the dignity of this institution the way that Jerry taught us to, even if the other side won't do it, that we mock these losers with every fiber of our being, and that we deliver for the American people, because that's why we're here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Last but certainly not least, since there is a war on science that is very much a part of this Trump agenda and this big billionaire bill of theirs, our champion for the climate and for science, Suzanne Bonamici from Oregon.
Well, thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here with such climate champions and a challenge, I must say, to follow Sean Casten. I don't have a baseball analogy, but I have a story, and I'm telling it for two reasons. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My grandparents came to this country from Italy for the American dream, where they knew when they came to this country, the next generation would have a better life, and that happened. My parents' generation had a better life than my grandparents. And my siblings and I had a better life than my parents' generation. And I'm hopeful that my children's generation will have a better future and a better life. And my children, they're in their 30s. My son was born in 1988. That was the year, the first year that a NASA scientist came to the US House of Representatives and sent a warning about climate change, anthropogenic climate change. So that was the first time that testimony happened, as far as I know, in the US House of Representatives almost 37 years ago. The second reason I'm telling this story is because my grandfather, who came from Italy, had been a stonemason in Italy. When they came through Ellis Island and ended up in Pennsylvania, he got a job in the coal mines. And he worked in the coal mines for a while until he lost his leg. And then he eventually passed away from lung disease. So I tell that story because why in the world would we want to put people back to work in coal mines? It makes no sense for many, many reasons. So imagine my pride and excitement when I worked with my colleagues here and we were able to make such amazing progress with the Inflation Reduction Act and other climate policies, finally, starting way back in the 80s and finally making a difference. And it really was something to celebrate. Was it enough? No. Was it a great start? Absolutely. But we know we have more work to do. And that's why we're here today to say, not on our watch will this big, bad bill advance. Because it started, as we know, through the committees, but now they started at 1 o'clock in the morning in the dark of night because they don't want people to know what's in this. People are just now finding things that are in it and saying, what in the world is this? But we know it is a blueprint to bulldoze many of the natural resources that Oregonians treasure and rely on for their livelihoods. I represent the district where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. It is a magnificent district and beautiful. But I tell you, it's beautiful, but this bill isn't. This bill is going to hand over Oregon's public lands to big oil, to polluters. It's going to gut trails and salmon streams and hunting grounds, and repealing the clean energy tax credits, as Sean Casten was saying. This is absurd. It's going to force families to pay more because we know fossil fuels are costing more, but CEOs of fossil fuel companies are going to be cashing in. You know, the Republicans claim that we're in some sort of energy emergency, but this bill supports the dangerous and unsustainable and harmful fossil fuel industry that is hurting people, planet, wildlife. It's slashing good paying jobs in solar, wind, geothermal, and that's something that I've cared about because on the Education and Workforce Committee, I'm the one who throughout the Select Committee and our work saying, addressing climate change is also about good jobs. Well, these are jobs that are going to be going away if this bill passes in not just in Blue Oregon, but also in red states that are depending on these growing industries. And again, it makes no sense because renewable energy, look at solar, it's less expensive. And when you consider the healthcare costs, it's way less expensive. I have to say too that this bill would also put Oregonians and Americans in increased danger of real emergencies they face because of the climate crisis. We've seen an increase, we know, in extreme weather events, wildfires, but I'm extremely concerned about gutting wildfire prevention. I don't want smoke-filled summers to be our new normal. Slashing coastal resilience funding. We are seeing sea level rise in Astoria, Seaside, other coastal towns. Stripping resources away from climate-smart farming as Oregon growers are facing increasing drought and heat. We had a terrible heat dome a couple of years ago. So this massive GOP tax scam is all pain for working families and all gain for billionaires in the boardroom. Oregonians and Americans know what is at stake, our coastline, our forest, but importantly, our future. So we're not gonna back down. We're gonna be here for the fight, and the fight is for our people, but it's also for our planet. So I was already in the Rules Committee. I know they're going on still. We're gonna do everything we can to stop this big bad bill from going forward. And I said, who's afraid of the big bad bill? A lot of people, and for good reason. Thank you.
All right, and with a dramatic entrance,
Your headliner.
another climate champion from California, Mike Levin.
Well, thank you so much, Jared, and thanks to everybody. Sorry for being a little late. Finally got to speak at the Rules Committee after I don't even know how many hours, but we got it done. Wanted to just take a second and offer my condolences to the loved ones of my friend and colleague Jerry Connolly. We certainly miss Jerry. He was a really wonderful man, great friend, and gone far too soon. I'm Congressman Mike Levin. I represent Southern California, and I'm one of the vice chairs of SEEC. And my message to you today is simple, and I would imagine is pretty similar to some that you've heard. House Republicans want to raise your energy bills, cut jobs, and frankly, kill the planet. To give bigger tax breaks to polluters and billionaires like Elon Musk. That's not what House Republicans want you to believe, but it's the truth. Over the past year, Donald Trump and the Republican Party have been talking about how the cost of living is too high. We've all heard that. But they've been, to use one of President Trump's expressions, all talk and no action. Instead of working to lower costs and pass policies that actually uplift Americans, they're pushing one of the most harmful, misguided, and backward bills I have ever seen. I've been in Congress for 6.5 years, and I've seen my fair share of bad bills, but this one tops the list. If they succeed, House Republicans will strip health care away from 14 million Americans, including 2 million just in our state of California. They'll take food assistance away from over 10 million kids, seniors, and veterans. But the cruelty doesn't stop there. They want to roll back all the progress we've made over the past few years combating the climate crisis. They want to gut the investments that we've made in clean energy and in clean manufacturing, and they want to raise your energy bills. Why? So that the rich can get richer. That's what I want to spend just a second on today. I'm the father of 2 young kids, an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old. And like any parent, my hope for my kids is that they have a better life than their parents. When I was growing up in Southern California, we still had smog alerts all the time. And at school, you'd do a lap on the track and your lungs would start to burn. We made a lot of progress. We were intentional about that progress over a number of years. We've put those days largely behind us. But with their so-called one big, beautiful bill, that's exactly where the Republicans want to take us back to. That's not the future that I want for my kids or for your kids. As part of their bill, House Republicans want to pollute our air and our water, cut jobs, and raise our energy bills. And instead of expanding the investments that we've already made to combat climate change, House Republicans want to sell our public lands to the highest fossil fuel bidders. often giving them the green light to destroy our air and our water. Their plan would pull the rug out from under manufacturing companies looking to invest in the U.S., ceding our clean energy future to China and other countries. Gutting clean energy tax credits would also kill American manufacturing jobs. Just last year, 93% of all new American energy supply came from solar, wind, and battery storage. Think of that, 93%. And we stand to lose many, many jobs in those industries, and those are in red states and in blue states. This GOP tax scam also repeals cost-saving clean energy tax credits, which means, on average, families will pay about 7% more on their energy bills every year. You heard that right. The average family will pay about $110 a year more in energy bills. So for all their talk about an energy crisis, here's how I know Republicans aren't serious about lowering energy costs. You cannot declare a national energy emergency while cutting out clean energy. The math doesn't add up. You cannot claim to want to lower costs and then push legislation that would raise energy costs for nearly every household in America. Doesn't pass the smell test. Instead of giving families a tax break for switching to clean energy, they want to give tax breaks to big oil. And at every turn they've taken, House Republicans have put polluters and billionaires ahead of working families, sabotaging America's ability to compete globally, to protect our health, and to build a cleaner future. It's an attack on every single American of all political parties, of all backgrounds, who values clean air, safe drinking water, public health, and economic fairness. So why are Republicans doing this? Why are they pushing this terrible bill? It's simple. Tax breaks for their billionaire donors, and that certainly includes the fossil fuel industry. They made their choice. They're not going back on it, but we have a choice too. We have a choice to fight back. We can choose clean air. We can choose clean water. We can choose the good-paying jobs of the future. We can choose that future that's affordable, that's equitable, that's sustainable for our kids and for generations to come. And that's what I'm going to fight like hell for, and I'm proud to stand with all of you in that fight. Thank you.
All right, thanks to my great colleagues here, and we are happy to answer any of your questions. Yeah.
So over on the Senate side today, they're going to be Republicans are trying to push through this overturning of several car and truck emission waivers. I was wondering if you all could talk at all about any of that and the impact that that could have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible thing. I can't really speak to the institutional concern about, how that shreds, what's left of Senate culture, if you will. But I can say that Clean Air Act waiver authority has been foundational to California's leadership, and it's something that we're going to need to fight for. I'm very disappointed that we lost some Democratic votes on that as it made its way out of the House. I think some of those Democrats now regret that vote. And I'm hoping that the Senate stands strong in defending that authority for not just California, but for a bunch of other clean air, clean car states. But if they don't, if they manage to, use this dubious application of the Congressional Review Act, there certainly will be a major challenge in court, and I'm optimistic that that'll be successful. Yeah.
So being from Southern California, in an area where, again, I grew up with constant smog alerts, is very, very important to me that we don't go back to those days. And in my office, I have an 8.5 by 11 photo from 1967, the creation of the California Air Resources Board, signed into law by Governor Ronald Reagan. And Republicans would be well served to remember that Ronald Reagan was governor in 1970 when President Richard Nixon, and congressional Republicans and Democrats worked together to pass the Federal Clean Air Act. California asked for and received a waiver, having created CARB 3 years prior. Governor Reagan, and then Governor Brown, Governor Wilson, Governor Davis, all the way through Governor Brown again, Governor Newsom, all of them, regardless of party, have worked very hard. And in California, we have 35 air districts that deal with stationary source air pollution, and to this day, we have the California Air Resources Board that deals with mobile source pollution. And they have done an incredible job. And they haven't been hamstrung by any federal rules. They set the targets for California to reduce criteria pollutants. We haven't gotten all the way there. That's the other thing. We are still in non-attainment for criteria pollutants in California. We've got a long way to go. Now is not the time to start kneecapping us in California. We want to set our own standards. We should have the right to do so. And my colleagues are completely misguided. And I think the courts are going to have their day, and we're going to be there to fight like hell alongside them and prevent this from happening.
I would just add that the party that celebrates states' rights when it comes to suppressing women's rights to choose or supporting people's rights to run through this Capitol carrying Confederate flags would be well-pressed to support states' rights when it comes to California's rights to control the air and water.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Amelia with E&E News. I've got 2 questions. The first is, I know there's a small contingent of moderate Republicans who are pushing to keep some of the clean energy credits or at least extend their sunset period. And I'm curious to what extent you guys are supporting those efforts. And then also, as this bill comes a little bit closer to moving toward the Senate, to what extent you guys are collaborating with other Democrats in the Senate to defend or to fight against this bill when it gets there.
Yeah, I'm sure my colleagues will have something to say, but it's showtime for those Republicans who have said that they acknowledge climate science, that they support these clean energy incentives. It's encouraging that they've been able to put their names on letters and offer various expressions of support for the clean energy future. But now it's time for them to walk the walk, and we're about to find out what's more important. The jobs in their districts, in their state, that clean energy transformation's creating, all these wonderful possibilities, acceptance of climate reality. It'd be great if they prioritize that, but they're under a lot of pressure from Donald Trump, so it's proven time.
Speaking up, speaking out is so important right now, and to hold the line, because these are tax incentives and rebates that are very important to their district and to a lot of districts. So there are a number of who signed that letter, but they should follow it up with real action.
The first rule of negotiation, watch their feet, not their lips. Serious, right? Like, don't waste time listening to what they're saying. When Donald Trump called Mike Lawler out and said, you're going to fold because I know your district, that's a chance for Mike Lawler to move his feet. We'll see.
Again, it's going to come down to what they do when they push the yes button or the no button. Yep. Because over my years here, there have been Republicans who have stepped up and said, climate change is real, we need to do something about it. And we have, particularly through the Sustainable Energy Environment Coalition, had meetings with the groups of folks on a bipartisan basis who say they support extending the tax credits, but what are they going to do when they push the button? So I think if you add the other serious issues like Medicaid, I can't imagine that some of them won't feel a lot of pressure to vote this down, because like with Medicaid, a lot of those are rural areas, just like a lot of these benefits go to rural areas. So we're just hopeful, but it's going to depend on what happens and how much pressure they get from the administration.
Maybe we have to go to a last question here.
All right, Josh.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
Long suffering Sox fan. You were looking at me at that time.
You and the Pope.
That's right. No,
Get
it's
things
not-
looked out.
I'm just wondering, in sort of like, I don't want to play too much 3D chess on where the end product is, but it feels like they're really going, after like wind and solar, they're starting to make this argument that, as you said, I think it was you, Congressman Levin, 92% of new electricity last year, wind, solar, and batteries, that they don't need this anymore. Maybe there's a way they could keep incentives for some of the advanced technologies that they like nuclear and geothermal that we hear Chris Wright talking about in hearings today on his budget proposal. Like, what do you say to that? is there a way to sort of unpack that where the end product could actually be not so terrible? These other technologies. I know they're not. Yeah, it's not all of the above. But
that's not going to happen, Josh.
Okay.
If they get rid of the incentives for renewables and for battery storage and for clean energy manufacturing, but they keep some goodies for the oil and gas industry, carbon capture, pipelines, dirty hydrogen, that is not a compromise. That is not anything that I think any of us could live with. It's a disaster for winning the future, it's a disaster for consumers, it's a disaster for the environment.
And you know, one of the biggest selling features when we did the negotiation was long-term incentives so that there's predictability and certainty, which is so important to the industry. And you don't unplug all of the efforts now that came forward to really build the success story. Bad timing, and it just shows where their loyalty lies.
I would also like, I mean, if I could just make a less snarky version of my opening remarks. The oil and gas industry, all of their profits come from the upstream end. You know, if you're running a well that produces at $30 a barrel and you can sell at 70, you make a lot of money. There's not a lot of money in refining, there's not a lot of money in distribution, there's not a lot of money in retail sales. They don't really know how to make money in an industry that has no fuel cost. Right? It's a fundamentally different skill set. It's not saying they're very smart people, but they don't know how to make money in that world. And so any transition is a huge economic threat to that sector. And I think the challenge the Republican Party has is that their leadership is all from the oil patch. Right? You got Mike Johnson from Louisiana, Steve Scalise from Louisiana, Thune from the Bakken oil fields. I think it's understandable why those folks would feel concerned that if we're going to lower the price of energy in America, that's going to be rough for jobs and employment on the Gulf Coast, in the Bakken. And I think we can be sensitive to that, and in the IRA we were very intentional, thanks to the leadership of a lot of people here, of prioritizing investments in those energy transition communities. And that's why you've seen so many of those investments. But they're still getting pressure because the industries that employ people are saying, I don't like this transition because that's digital film and I'm Kodak. And I can't get there from here. And I think it behooves us to be very sensitive to like those loss of jobs and those people. But at the same point, like the loser is the American consumer because there's a lot more energy consumers than there are energy producers.
Just real quick, are any of you surprised that, you know, I know you were very intentional with the IRA that these investments would spread to Republican states and districts with an eye toward maybe that would help protect them. But we have yet to hear a House moderate Republican say they will vote down this bill for that reason. Like, are you surprised that maybe it's not working out that way, you know, at least politically?
I would say, and I think I've had this conversation with you before, like, I find the Iowa caucus really interesting to watch. It's not an oil patch state, it's not a gas patch state, it's not a coal patch state. They got a ton of wind, they got a ton of biofuels. They also don't really have anyone in leadership. And if that caucus was putting their constituents first, they would be making a lot of noise. But like, it's the fact that like the leadership of the Republican Party is saying, no, like we have to do things that are gonna be bad for Iowa, and they're not flinching. I think that's a structural problem. I mean, I don't know, I'm talking too much.
No, that's good.
I also think that if it was a standalone bill, it would be very different, but you know, oftentimes these are the people who are saying, why are you putting so many things in one bill? And then now they're putting so many things in one bill, but if it was, you know, this is the only issue they're voting on, it might be different, but it's not.
Clearly the strategy of the one big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
And to Suzanne's point, you know, every one of these members only has so much political capital, and if they're trying to advocate for SALT or Medicaid and for the continuation of those tax provisions, you know, the red line that I've seen a lot of them draw is on SALT or is on Medicaid as opposed to the clean energy tax provisions. Now, I hope that there are a couple senators who decide that the red line is actually those clean energy tax provisions because of the tremendous economic impact that those investments are already yielding in their states. We'll see.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, folks,
Thank
thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, team.
For
That's
organizing this.